In veterinary medicine, technology is everywhere, from practice management systems to AI tools and cloud-based platforms. But technology alone doesn't create efficiency. What truly matters is how those systems are planned, implemented, and aligned with the people using them every day. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Veterinary Business Podcast, where modern veterinary leadership meets real-world strategy. I'm your host, Don Adeesha. I'm glad you're here today. Now, today's conversation is about moving beyond the reactive tech decisions and towards efficient systems that strengthen veterinary operations and protect both teams and clients. Our episode is titled Smarter Systems, Safer Practices, Using AI and Technology to Build Efficient, Ethical Veterinary Operations. And joining us today is William Lindus. William is a veterinary operations leader with over 17 years of experience improving workflows, scaling teams, and implementing technology that enhances efficiency and client satisfaction. He serves as a director of operations at IT Guru, where he oversees client services, marketing, and sales, while leading initiatives that strengthen service delivery across veterinary practices. His background includes veterinary-focused technology management and years of experience leading cross-functional teams with a strong focus on building systems that improve communication between veterinary teams and IT provider. William is also a longtime industry contributor, author, and speaker on modern veterinary operations, and he currently serves as Vice President of Vet Partners. So, in this episode, we'll explore how veterinary practices can approach AI with intention and ethics, common technology and cybersecurity pitfalls teams should avoid, and how smarter systems can reduce friction, improve efficiency, and support sustainable practice growth. Now, before we dive in, a quick resource for all our listeners. If your practice is looking to strengthen your practice's online visibility and client trust, we are offering a complimentary marketing strategy meeting with Lila, a veterinary marketing strategist who's helped hundreds of clinics grow with clarity and confidence. In this free session, you'll receive a review of your current online presence, as well as a 6-month growth roadmap tailored just for your practice. You can book your free session at www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM. That's www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM. And with that being said, William, welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Don, thank you so much for having me. Heck of an intro. I hope I live up to all of the different kind words you said about me kind of leading up to here. This is going to be a lot of fun, though.
Now, let's get into the main questions. AI is gaining traction fast in veterinary medicine. From an operations standpoint, how should practices approach AI planning thoughtfully and ethically rather than reacting to trends?
Absolutely. The first thing that I think that any practice leadership needs to understand is what the ethical concerns with AI are. And there's a lot of them. Understanding that some of these issues involve things like environmental resources. There are political issues that are coming up. Some people may have seen some of the news about the clash recently between the government and Anthropic on how AI should or should not be used for certain things, as well as generative AI and its impacts on creators. And the truth of the matter is I can't solve those issues here. If I could, this would be a much longer podcast. But what I can help us talk about today is understanding the ethical concerns as they pertain to data security and integrity within the practice. First thing, I really recommend that any practice leadership team understands and communicates to your team is how to use AI. This is regardless of the AI platform itself. And I believe in something that I call the human AI human sandwich, which means that there's sort of a 3-step process to any AI tool that you're going to use. Just like with anything, it's garbage in, garbage out. So the human needs to start the process by developing the idea and doing the critical thinking. If you outsource the critical thinking to AI, you're going to get responses that are not personalized to your practice, and that in some cases may be erroneous. And then you may be giving medical advice that doesn't meet your ethical standards or that may actually cause harm. So the human needs to do the critical thinking up front. But let the AI do some of the busy work. This is where you kind of you may have seen the pet patient up front. Now you're using an AI tool that's integrated with the practice management software, for example, to help you generate your soaps based off of what you did the input on. It's saving you some of the legwork. But then at the end, a human needs to review anything that you do prior to implementation, because AI is getting better and better, but it still gets things wrong. So that's the human AI human sandwich. Critical thinking, AI does the busy work, but human checks the work. Now,
tell me a little. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and I also prioritize the use of AI, of closed AI systems here. I'm not a big fan of using ChatGPT and other open free practice tools or free tools within the practice. I had a practice once come to me and say, hey, should I be using AI to help me with my soaps? I said, yes. And they said to me, great, because what we do is we put our patient data into ChatGPT at the end of every patient meeting. I'm like, no, pump the brakes. This is not secure data and puts your pets and your data at risk. So unfortunately, and people don't necessarily always want to hear this, but using a paid integrated tool is better than using a free tool. Yes, I know we're looking at budgets and all of those different things, but it's better for your long-term, your patients long-term.
Okay, now a few things there I would like to unpack. Let's start with this critical thinking piece. What do you mean exactly by critical thinking here?
By critical thinking, I mean any of the initial input that comes in. So in the example of using a soap, I would want to make sure that as the physician or anyone doing the input, I'm putting in clear, accurate notes based off of what I'm finding. I've seen some places where people will put in just some of these symptoms and then try to have AI figure things out from there and do the analysis for them. I would much prefer in this scenario here that some of that the work that the veterinarians do and that the technicians do is still done there. The same thing with anything more along the lines of the straight up busy work that AI can help us with. Things like building SOPs for your practice. There's a lot of great ways that you can save a lot of time writing a lot of boring SOPs by using AI, but you still need to do some initial thought up front. What am I trying to accomplish? What is this SOP going to do for my team? How is this going to work? And there's another piece of critical thinking that needs to come in here, and that's legal review. For example, if you're building out an AI usage policy for your team that all staff member needs to adhere to, what platforms you can use, which you can't, use cases, and all of that. This is a really great way to get your team all on the same page. And you can actually use AI to help you write these AI usage tools. But you should have your lawyer review it, both kind of going in and also coming out to make sure that anything that you're holding your staff accountable to meets HR, state legal, veterinary compliance laws for your particular state.
And when we're consulting this AI, you would always recommend a closed AI?
When and where possible, absolutely. So that may be something along the lines of there's a lot of AI tools that live within some of these cloud practice management softwares. For example, you might have an AI tool. I'll give you two. I know Instinct as a cloud tool uses ScribbleVet, and it's built right in. And the same thing with Shepherd has differential AI built right in. And so instead of going external, you can stay within that platform and stay within that tool. And while no amount of technology is ever 100% safe, you are at least putting some safeguards on to build yourself the best possible scenario.
What are the most common technology-related inefficiencies you see in veterinary practices that quietly slow teams down and impact the client experience?
Yeah, there's unfortunately a lot of these, right? There's a lot that we see as sort of like the common denominators here. Printers are always something that slows every practice down. The underutilization of new potential tools, reliance on, well, this has always worked, therefore I don't want to try something new. One thing that I look at is something that I call the waterfall of inefficiency. And we have all of these team members within a veterinary practice who have very specific functions they need to perform. But one piece of technology can throw everything off. So let's say your front printer is not working. In the veterinary industry, we are really good at working around. No problem. My front printer isn't working. I can just go to the back and print there. So let's say you're doing a checkout and your CSR is trying to check somebody out and they can't print, so they run to the back. Now the phone's ringing because the CSR isn't available to pick it up and answer. So that technician's walking by and says, I'll take care of this because I don't want to leave my customers hanging. It could be an emergency. So the technician picks up the phone. Now that technician was supposed to be inside of one of the exam rooms, prepping a patient, getting some vitals before the doctor comes in. So the doctor says, well, no problem. I can do this as well. So instead of spending time prepping the patient or prepping the notes, reviewing patient history, now the doctor is going in and doing the technician's work. None of those functions are unimportant. Every one of those functions is important, but by everyone shifting off of their original task, now everyone's day is thrown off, all because of one printer that wasn't working. So in this situation, one of the big things that I would look at is outdated systems, processes, and technology debt. These can be things like using old paper schedules, lost data, things along those lines, or just failing to do some of those upgrades that you need to do. Hardware, software, not updating your software in a timely manner. We also often see that kind of represented by like, well, my computer's running slow, but I don't ever take the time to hit that little update now button at the bottom of my computer. I'll just hit tomorrow. I'll do tomorrow, remind tomorrow. These updates are important not only from a security perspective, but also from an efficiency and performance. They're put out there because they're trying to fix some sort of issue. So we see that. So I'm a big fan of having technology road mapping. If a printer's not working, fix it. If a workstation is getting to its life cycle, which realistically these days, planned obsolescence is a real thing that happens in technology. So we know that workstations, desktops kind of last 3 to 5 years at max. Some practices are still using 10, 15-year-old computers and they creep and they slow and they shut down. And that's time that they could be spending with patients instead of doing that reboot every hour. So figure out what technology needs to be repaired and when, and then build a roadmap. With AI, there's a problem with the misuse of AI. And that's the situation where we end up with where people will rush out and they'll get AI tools because they feel like they're supposed to, but not figure out the why and the how they need to be implemented. So with AI, I'm a big fan of figure out your use case first. What problem are you trying to solve? Then find the AI tool instead of getting it because it's the fancy new thing.
Now, few things there, William. I would like some clarification. When you talked about outdated systems, what's the list of priorities that practice owners should, work with?
Yeah,
to replace these?
So from a workflow and a security perspective, you always want to work kind of from the network trunk down. So what that means is that if your firewall or whatever, if you're using a bridge type system, is out of date, is not patched properly, you're leaving yourself vulnerable, first of all. That's one of your biggest vulnerability points. So you should be working with your IT team to make sure that firewall is up to date. If you are still in a server environment and that server is more than about 7 years old, you should be looking at replacing your server. Now, servers are expensive. Servers are very expensive. So if you're getting close to that 7-year mark, this is also the time to start thinking, should I switch to a cloud-based practice management software? You're at a fork in the road. Do I do the capital expenditure on a big new server investment, or do I swap over to a cloud situation? Both are fine. I'm personally more fan of going to the cloud because of the integrations, the tools, some of the security functions. But either way, once you hit that 7-year mark, you need to replace that. Downstream of server, now you're looking at your workstations, each of those individual endpoints. And a workstation can be a desktop, a laptop. It may even be a tablet if you are doing just sort of tablets in the exam room. And each one of those is going to have a different life cycle. And then finally, the printers. Printers are a little bit of a different animal. With life cycle on a printer, there's a certain point where they just stop functioning the way that they're supposed to, and that's when it's time to just replace them. It's don't fight your printer forever, replace it.
Love it. Um, Now, cybersecurity often feels overwhelming for veterinary teams. What are the most important do's and don'ts every practice should understand to protect their systems and data?
Yeah. So, first of all, you should be thinking about cybersecurity from the perspective of a framework and not the individual tools. This can be a more robust conversation, so I'll break it down in just sort of the 50,000 feet. A framework is basically your map of how you handle threats both before and after an incident occurs. Usually that involves some form of identifying what your assets and your vulnerabilities are, knowing what your protections are, understanding how you both detect and respond to attacks, and then understanding the process for recovery after an attack. Once you figure out what that framework is, then you start filling out the tools beneath it. I believe in a multi-layered protection solution. I think about every single cybersecurity tool, almost imagine like a slice of Swiss cheese in your hand. On the other side of it, you can see through it because there's holes. So if I am an attacker and I've got one tool in place, I can still get through. Those holes exist. But if I stack enough tools and those holes are in different places, it doesn't matter that every tool has vulnerabilities. I've got enough stacked up that I've made it incredibly difficult for an attacker to get through. So when I say multiple tools, what are some of those tools that you should be looking at is probably the next question. Having a good firewall, as I mentioned in the previous question, or some sort of bridge type environment that has protections at the upper level. You'll want to make sure you have a good next-gen AV. And by next-gen AV, usually you're looking at some sort of tool that is using behavior-based as opposed to just credential-based. In other words, it's looking for malicious behaviors instead of pulling from a list of previously known bad attackers. That's how antivirus used to work. People would compile these lists of known attackers and those would get pushed out. But things evolve so quickly with AI now that you can't do that. So now you use AI, you use these tools to look for bad behaviors. If someone gets into one workstation and starts doing things that they're not supposed to, the antivirus goes, wait a minute, this is fishy. We should stop this. I'm also a fan of what's called endpoint detect and response tools. And this is fighting fire with fire. These endpoint detect and response tools utilize AI, usually partnered with some sort of 24/7 security operations center, to find those weird behaviors and isolate machines before a human has even looked at them. So let's say that you've accidentally clicked a bad link on your computer, and now there is some sort of malicious hardware that is trying to get into, or malicious software that is rooting through your files, trying to get to something so that it can deploy a payload. Before it can do that, your endpoint detect and response tool, that AI, says, wait a minute, this is suspicious, and locks up that machine. So even if that one workstation is infected, it doesn't get to the rest of the network. Then it will automatically send alerts to that 24/7 security operations center team, who will then review any of those quarantine devices, see if it's a false positive or if it's a real threat, and then figure out what the remediation is from there. So this lets you defend much faster than if you had someone like even just like sitting there full time, just like watching every machine, because the AI is happening in nanoseconds.
Right. And William, can you also help us break down You mentioned how to handle it before versus after. Do you mean after an attack has happened? Like, does the
Yeah.
process change completely, or where does that alteration happen?
Yeah. So what it means is that you have to protect all the legs of the table. So with that first leg identification, you have to know what you're protecting before you can protect it, right? So this includes understanding your vendors, understanding your asset lists, understanding every resource, understanding who is connecting to your stations and how. If they're connecting remotely from home, and if so, how are they doing that? If they're only connecting from the office, if you have separate Wi-Fi for public and guests, all of these different things that you may have set up, you have to understand it. The protections are then where we put those tools in place to protect those assets and protect those vulnerabilities. And you have to have the tools in place to do that. But some people stop there and say, okay, I'm going to throw my walls up first. But realistically, sometimes people get past the walls. So you have to understand the detection tools are in place. And these are going to be things like that endpoint detect and response that are looking for those threats in real time. You're going to understand how to respond to things. And then on that recovery side, this is along the lines of, well, how often and what's the extent of the backups that you do? Are you doing backups every hour? Are you doing backups once a week? Can you afford to lose an hour's worth of data if you have to roll back? Probably. Can you afford to lose a week's worth of data if you have to roll back? Probably not. So and then what happens with where are those backups stored? Is it on a local machine, or is it on a local machine that also does maybe a once a day cloud backup as a redundancy on that backup? So it's understanding how all of these things work, because when we're talking cybersecurity, we want to understand the walls. We want to understand what happens after the attackers get through the walls. And then we have to know how we repair the city once we've pushed the attackers back outside of the walls.
What does that look like
Well,
once we
that
push the attackers outside the wall?
Yeah, and so that can vary a little bit. A lot of times it's really good for a team to have a disaster response plan for specifically that. And includes having certain members of the team. And when I say the team, this includes practice ownership. This would include, in some places, depending on what happens, you may be compelled to report to a legal entity. So like reporting to the police if there was an attack. This might be working with your lawyers. This might be working with your cyber insurance team. All of those different things to make you whole again. And then also working with your IT team to say, okay, something happened here. What was it? Most of the time, it's a phishing attack. Someone clicked a link that they weren't supposed to. So do we need to lock up that particular email account? Is there staff training that needs to occur? Are there additional tools that need to be put in place to prevent this from going forward? It almost becomes like a full circle, because after we've recovered, we go back to identifying new assets that we have put into place and new protections that go in to protect those assets. So it's a never-ending cycle, I would say.
Okay. Now, William, you work often at the intersection of veterinary teams and IT providers. Is there a communication gap, and how common is it?
There is a communication gap, and it's huge. So let's be honest. On the IT side of things, when I'm wearing that hat, I'm in an industry that uses a lot of acronyms and a lot of jargon. A lot of people might even remember Saturday Night Live had this character. At this point, 20 plus years ago, Nick Burns, your company's computer guy, who would just spout out jargon and then eventually tell people to move and shut them out. That's what we think of when we think of like the IT guy. Alternatively, we're serving an industry that uses a lot of acronyms and a lot of jargon, the veterinary medical side of things. And so because of that, we have a lot of intelligent people on both sides of this gap that are very educated on their field, and they don't always take the time to bring things back down. How does that play out in real time? So that means that IT may explain things in an overly technical, not useful way. We may just buzz past the idea of I need to deploy a UPS to protect you during a during a power glitch, and someone would say, "Well, what does that even mean?" A UPS is basically a short-term battery backup, just to sort of give you an extra 5 minutes of or so to power things down gracefully. But we sometimes just say the acronym and move on. Likewise, veterinarians may talk to their IT team and say, I'm in the middle of a TPLO, so I need to get this machine fixed. And so as the IT provider, you may not understand what that particular procedure is or why it's important to get those machines back up and running right away. What we don't always communicate is I have a pet that's on a surgery table under anesthesia, and because they're under anesthesia, there's potential risks. So this is why this machine being down is hazardous. So we sometimes talk past each other. And the other thing that comes on top of this, just realistically from this communication gap perspective, is practices are busy and they have budgets. So that means a lot of time we just throw IT coordination as a whole on the practice manager's plate and just say, hey, figure out IT, in addition to all the other things that they have to do. So now the practice manager has to understand the network and has to make sound IT decisions when that's not their background, that's not their training, and it's just one of a few small things that exist within the practice. And they don't often have a budget to then have an IT team who they can coordinate with to take some of that heavy lifting off their plate. So because of all of that, we don't often have a smooth handoff of ideas. So yes, that gap does exist.
And tell me, how can the leadership really help bridge that gap intentionally and more effectively?
Yeah, there's two major things that I would really push here. And one that is, when and where possible, identify who your IT specialist is going to be. That might be someone that's an on-staff person. That might be an IT team or agency that you work with. Whoever it is, you need to have your point of contact and carve them enough time and energy to do this. If you have the budget, I do recommend an IT team, because then that allows them, these are people who are trained to do this the same way as a veterinarian is trained to perform surgeries or to perform the exams that they do. Your IT team is going to understand the new trends and understand how to deploy things. But on top of all of that, there are some tips that I can give in terms of how to communicate with IT that make things more helpful. A lot of times I'll get a ticket, so just a service desk ticket that'll come through that might say something along the lines of, my computer's not working. And that's hard to work with. It's the same thing as if I walked into the veterinary clinic and I just said, hey, my cat is sick, and walked out. Every veterinary team possible would say, well, I've got some questions about that. They would say, hey, when you say sick, lethargy, vomiting, diarrhea, has diet changed? They would want to know the symptoms, how long they've lasted, what wellness actually normally looks like for this pet. So when submitting a ticket, and this is something to train everybody on the team on, I believe very strongly in just having some sort of document in your practice that says when opening a ticket or when communicating IT issues, here's what you do. Detailed descriptions. You don't have to diagnose, but you do have to provide the symptoms so that your IT team can do that diagnosis. So give us the symptoms. Where possible, give us timestamps. If a machine went down and it happened at 9:30 this morning, let us know, because sometimes we can see a trend. Maybe it's going down every morning at 9:30 for the last week because there's some sort of software push that's happening and failing and scheduled at that time. We would only know that if we understood the timestamp. Screenshots where possible. You'll get those little error messages that we just hit OK and move past and then say, oh, it's not working. Take a screenshot of that. Sometimes we can tell from that error code what's happening. Is it a disk drive error? Is there something more concerning happening? And also relay impact and criticality. If it's one printer out of 5 in your practice that's down, that's one thing. If it's the entire practice's ability to access your practice management software, that's another thing. So we need to know how to triage these just like you would with a pet coming into your patient. I would say foster an open environment. Sometimes people make mistakes on their computers, and you don't want them to be afraid to open a ticket or raise their hand. So an environment of like no harm, no foul from your team. And then the last thing I would really recommend here is ask questions. I'm still, when I'm talking to you, going to accidentally use jargon and technical terms, the same way you're probably going to accidentally do that with your pet patients. You would want them in those situations, if they don't understand something, to ask a question for clarification. Do the same thing. Ask me as many questions as you need. Hey, I didn't understand this. What's the implication of that? How should I do that? If your IT team is doing what they're supposed to, they will take the time to answer every single one of those questions and break it down in a way that you'll be able to understand.
Amazing. Thank you so much, William, for that wonderful breakdown. Yeah. Now, if a practice wanted to use technology to become more efficient without adding on to complexity or burnout, what's one realistic step they could take in the next 30 days?
So the important thing to think about here with that question is that within the next 30 days, you're probably not going to solve the issue. So I like the way that you worded it. What's the realistic step they can take, right? So the first thing that I recommend for any software, hardware, anything like that solution is ask yourself, what problem am I trying to solve? Because sometimes we jump straight to, I saw a demo at VMX, at WVC, at AVMA, Fetch. I went to this cool conference and I saw a demo and now I want the thing. But we don't necessarily think, what am I trying to solve? So figure out what you're trying to solve. Then work with your team. And when I say your team, this isn't just the leadership team. You should develop a task force of stakeholders that have some sort of skin in the game about that particular solution. So technicians, CSRs, other doctors in the practice, whoever it is that touches that piece of technology as it exists or will be impacted by whatever the change is. Help them identify the cause of the problem, work with them to develop that, figure out what the issue is from is it the technology is the issue? Is it training with existing technology? Are there efficiency issues that are caused by technology gaps? Do I need to replace something, repair something, or train my staff on something, basically? Then after that, you should be making a checklist. What are my must-haves and what are my, gosh, this would be nice to have features? After you do that, then it's time to demo, and you should always demo at least 3 technology products, if at all possible, and have them go against that checklist. Because you need to understand what your options are out there and whether or not these options are going to actually accomplish your goals. Now, of course, budget is important. Some things are going to cost more, cost less than others, but you don't want to pay less for something that doesn't meet your checklist. Sometimes you need to invest the proper amount to get the thing that most accomplishes what you're trying to solve. Budget that. In some cases, it's even a matter of planning it out over the course of, maybe this isn't something that you invest in. It's not in the budget Q1, but maybe it's a Q2 investment, but at least you're doing your legwork here. And then, of course, the last thing on this, I would say, or the last 2 items on this, is bring in your IT team to help with the discussion before anything is signed. And remember to only solve one problem at a time. Staff can be really resistant to change, so implement technology changes very deliberately. Notice at this point, in these first 30 days, we haven't signed anything. But what we've done is we've done our legwork, we've done our planning, so that once we do make we sign off on it and start implementing whatever that new technology is, we're set up for success.
Starting with the what problem am I trying to solve? Is it always the case, or is it always the best case scenario if we start with that instead of, okay, here's the new, software, or else here's the new equipment. And I think that's going to help me solve this problem of mine.
Yeah. So ultimately, if it's new, it's probably got some cool features, right? But those cool features should solve some sort of problem. And when I say problem, it doesn't have to be that something is not working. It could be maybe something isn't working as well as it could. So let's use the example, going back to voice, AI scribing, right? You probably have in your practice a system that works right now. Maybe you just go into the back room and do your soaps after. Maybe you have a technician who's typing at the same time. And it probably works, but there is a time lag that happens. You're maybe not putting things in exactly in real time, or you're using up an additional resource that could be in another exam room starting the next patient. So the problem you're trying to solve here is, how can I be more efficient with my staff's time? Not necessarily that there's a break, but there is a way to be better at what you've currently got. So this new feature, this new tool can help you solve that. But in this case, we still were able to tie it back to some sort of hopefully measurable way that this new tool, this new hardware, this new piece of software can help you be a better practice. You should never buy it because it's new. You should buy it because the new thing does something that will help you.
Okay, got it. Now, William, we have reached the end of the podcast here. I would love for you to share the golden nugget of this conversation with our listeners. What's the one key takeaway, if they could take away just one?
Yeah. The one key takeaway on all of this is that technology and anything around it, cybersecurity, AI, working with the AI team, all of these things that I've talked about here today, there is a bit of a deliberate time investment that you should carve out in your practice for any of these things, whether that be spending the proper time planning before a new investment, coordinating with your IT team, training your staff, developing your disaster response plan and your cybersecurity framework, whatever it is you're doing. We sometimes think of it because it's scary, it's hard, there's a lot of other things that you have to do in your practice. It's sometimes one of the easiest things for us to put on the back burner. Well, I've got a patient in the office right now, I'll look at that tomorrow. Well, I've got to get payroll out, well, I'll look at that tomorrow. Hey, you know what? I really need to make sure that I'm getting all of my staff reviews in, so I'll put that off till tomorrow. These are all important things. But tomorrow will always be tomorrow if we don't turn that tomorrow into today and spend that time working on it. Sometimes that means working with a team to help you find that time, but bare minimum, every practice should carve out some time in their schedule to do these things and to account for these things and plan for these things.
Amazing. William, thank you so much for such a valuable and insightful conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, just technology in general. I mean, I'm a pet owner myself, and I've been in this industry for a long time. And my favorite people are the people that help bring my pets and the pets of others to wellness. So anything I can do to help them, even if it just makes their jobs, 1 degree easier, I feel like I'm winning.
I love that and could not have agreed with you more. To our listeners, thank you so much for investing this time in your leadership and your practice. Whether you're a practice owner, manager, or team leader, we hope today's episode gave you practical insights to approach technology with clarity, confidence, and purpose. If William's perspective resonated with you, we encourage you to explore his work through IT Guru and Vet Partners, where he continues to support the veterinary business through smarter systems, operational strategy, and stronger alignment between people and technology. And before we wrap up, a reminder, you can still book a complimentary marketing strategy meeting with Lila, where you'll receive a personalized review of your clinic's online presence and a 6-month growth roadmap tailored to your goals. Visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM. That's www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM. to schedule your free session. Now, from all of us here at the Veterinary Business Podcast, thank you for showing up, leading intentionally, and building practices that are not only efficient, but secure, ethical, and future ready. Until next time, take care.